And
What's this, a class trip for the
I'd like to
board?
welcome everyone this evening. And at this point, if we could all stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Dr. McCormick, if you could validate the posting of the meeting.
I would, sir. It was posted in the central office, towns, and schools.
Thank you very much. At this point, I would like to just take a moment to welcome our new superintendent-elect, who is sitting here with us this evening at the table, Stacy Buckley, and would just like to suggest that everyone else have a chance to do so at any break. Say hello. So we're glad to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
At item 2, we had no non-public sessions scheduled at the beginning of the meeting, but there will be a brief non-public following the conclusion of the meeting this evening. And moving on to item 4, I do have that modification planned as a suggested change to the agenda. Without objection, I would like to assume that that's okay.
I don't think I have a modification to the agenda, but I do have some additional recognitions, one that was left off the original list.
Okay. All right, when we get to that,
Yeah.
I can ask that you will take care of that. Okay. At this point in time, we are going to do some recognition. And so I would like to ask that those that are going to be recognized, almost none of whom I see.
Judy's here in the back row.
Except for
Judy Bird, woohoo!
Judy Bird.
Come on up, Judy Bird, yoo-hoo!
Maybe she'll sing for us.
Yes.
Let's see. Judy, for organizing the national anthem singing at the Fisher Cats game, we would like to officially recognize you and thank you for doing that. Recognition is something we don't do enough, and you haven't had the opportunity to do so, so we're very glad that you were able to give us this opportunity.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I would like to just read this, if I could. It says, Certificate of Appreciation to Judith Bird. With profound appreciation and sincere gratitude for your efforts on behalf of the Newfound Area School Board. Thank you for organizing the national anthem singing at the Fisher Cats game. We recognize your ongoing and outstanding commitment and contributions to the Newfound Area School District. And if I could, I'd like to borrow a pen to sign these in your presence. And just offer my congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That was fun.
Stephanie. She is not here. Okay. Do we have any of the merit scholars present?
Mr. Migliori, the students we're going to try to make it, but some of them have games and or other commitments. So I don't think any of the students who would have been recognized will be here this evening. They did speak with Mr. O'Malley.
Okay.
So I don't know how you want to proceed. You'll either have them another time, or if you'll read it into the record, we'll get the certificates to them, however you prefer.
Okay, why don't we mention the names publicly and the reason that they're being recognized, and I will look to the SAU to take care of that administrative task. How's that? So Stephanie Wiencheck, we would like to recognize for yet another wonderful musical production this year. It was quite incredible. 3 sellouts of Peter Pan. I don't know if you had an opportunity to attend. I did, and I enjoyed it very much. So Stephanie put together quite a production. I did a little theater in college myself, and I know how much work that is. With profound appreciation and sincere gratitude for your efforts on behalf of the Newfound Area School Board, thank you for yet another wonderful musical performance this year. We recognize your ongoing and outstanding commitment and contributions to the Newfound Area School District. Stephanie Leach. As far as National Merit Scholars, we have 4 to name, mention, and one of them is Kelly Gallagher.
Track.
The other is Ashley Rozeski. Megan Gelderman, and finally, David Gibson. This is certainly quite an accomplishment. An academic performance that deserves the recognition. The other 3 names we have are all related to sports. One is Jake Dearborn. Jake was the only, or the first, I'll just read it. It says, the Newfound Area School Board would like to congratulate you on being the first Newfound football player in school history to be selected to participate in the prestigious New Hampshire, Vermont Maple Sugar Shrine football game. And for that, we recognize Jake Dearborn. Allie Simons, the Newfound Area School Board would like to congratulate you on being the Laconia Citizens Field Hockey Player of the Year. And then lastly, but not least, that I have to recognize is the Newfound Area School Board would like to congratulate you, Amber Plummer, on being Laconia Citizens Girls Basketball Player of the Year. I'd like to have a little round of applause for that. Thank you very much. And I would like, at this point, to ask Ruby Hill to recognize a couple of additional folks that we want to go ahead and recognize. Ruby?
Sure. The first is a group, and this high school people already know about this, but Earl Mills, Gail Bliss, Cindy Lord, and Brigitte, is that how she says her name? Gray. I don't know where Mike is. They were, is it Brigitte?
Yes,
Gray? Bridget? Okay, sorry. They were in the 26-4-26 relay race for victims in Newtown. And they wore the name of one of the victims. And the victims' pictures were posted every mile. I can't even imagine. So anyway, that was wonderful. And I think that's an inspiration to the kids here too. Next, Sky DeVarney. She has 2 middle school students who are going to the National History Day competition in Washington, D.C. They placed second at the competition at Plymouth State, and first and second place finishes get to go on, so that's a big deal. And she should be proud, and so should her students. And third, and Anne might have a little detail here, Mrs. La Rochelle is partnered up with the Blazing Star Grange in Danbury to have a community garden for the kids, and they just got a grant.
$1,000.
Do you know who that's from?
I
don't
off
know.
the top of my head, sorry.
Yeah, I almost think maybe the Department of Agriculture, but I don't know. So anyway, that's a great thing, and I went over and took some pictures of them planting their stuff. Yeah. So that's it.
Well, thank you very much. Does anyone else have anyone that we may have missed recognizing? Okay. We're now at item 5 on the agenda, which is intercommunications. I would ask that all those in attendance to please sign in on one of the 2 clipboards right in the front, printing your name and town, and then returning it to the clerk for recording. Leah would need to do that for the correct spelling and legal requirements to record who's here in attendance and who may speak. The other item is to receive regular school board packets digitally. Please record your request on the designated sheet or email suecross@sau4.org. That will allow you to do so. You will get the same packet that we get digitally. We're now at item 5C, which is public comment. And I do see a couple of public officials in attendance this evening. So if anyone who has anything to say as a public official, you're up at bat. Anyone? Okay. Any members of the public that would wish to speak this evening? Yes.
Actually, just since I'm here, I'd like to extend a personal invitation. We do have 2 elementary spring concerts coming up. One is Wednesday, May 29th at this high school for Bristol Elementary School. Actually, 2 of them are that night. There'll be a K-1-2 concert at 6 o'clock and a grades 3, 4, and 5 at 7 o'clock, so you're all personally welcome. And then the other one is out in Danbury on June 3rd at 6:30. It's Monday evening. And the theme of the evening will be growing up great and exploring life choices and careers. So just a little welcome since I'm here. Little invitation.
And just for the record, would you state your name, Judy, and town?
I'm sorry. My name is Judy Bird, and I'm the elementary music teacher for the Newfound district.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Mimi's not here this evening, so we don't have a faculty liaison report, but Joanna Sewell is, and we'd like to give you yield the floor.
We just had our spring concert, I guess, and we don't really have that much going on. I think students are just getting ready for their finals and finishing up AP testing, so not a lot's going on.
Exciting time of the year, though.
Yeah, almost done with the year. I know all the seniors are excited.
Did you go to New Jersey?
Yes, they did.
How'd you guys do?
The chorus got second and the band got third, and we got a couple awards, like Sam Tracy got a solo award, so that was good.
I think the newsletter said 5.
Yeah,
trophies.
I know there were a couple for like
Yeah.
our low brass and I think the alto chorus section, so.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Okay, we're about to go into our school board minutes review. Before we do that, I just want to apologize in advance if I am interrupted this evening. I do have to take an important phone call, and so if that happens, I'll just turn the meeting over to Ruby. So we're, which she was aware of in advance. If we can, we'll be looking at the April 8th minutes that are in your packet, which I want to compliment the SAU on for their crisp nature and the nice change we made to clearly indicate in our action items with a bold X what was actually done on them. They're nice and succinct. They carry the essence of what was discussed and become the official record of our meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to April 8th?
On 6B,
Mr.
the
Franklin.
policy, or the committee assignments,
6B.
I noted that there was a difference between what was printed for us in that Jeff is, in the minutes showed on the Wellness Council, as well as myself. And unfortunately, I wasn't there at that meeting, and I had asked to be on the Tech Council as well. So is Jeff supposed to be on the Wellness as well?
Trying to see what, could you pass me that for a second? 14.
The last one.
No, you're right. Actually, we have Jeff on the Technology Council and just yourself on the Wellness Council. So Jeff is not on the Wellness Council.
And can I be added to the Tech Council?
As a matter of fact, yes. No reason not to do that. Without objection from the board, I see no reason to not add you to Wellness.
To Tech.
Tech, I'm sorry.
Is that a minutes change or just a change?
The fact is that Don did ask me in the beginning to do that, and I neglected to do that. So he's pointing out that that should have been made in that manner. But the correction is that Jeff Levesque is not on the Wellness Council. There you go. Thanks, Don, for reminding me. Anyone else? Okay, without further correction on the April 8th minutes. I do have one minor one under the public in attendance. Below box 17, under Tom Gump, he is shown as a Bristol Select Board member. He's actually with the Hebron Select Board. So if that change could be made, I'd appreciate it. Is there a motion to approve the April 8th minutes as amended? Moved by Ruby?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Paul. As amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Vote is 7-0-0. Thank you. We're now looking at the March 11th minutes. I had a request, or rather a correction for item 9A. Having been quoted at the bottom in the box there, it says Vincent Paul Migliori said they did have an explicit request to get on the policy agenda, not an explicit express. Please make that change. Sue?
Okay, on page 2, it's corrections of the minutes of January 14th,
Okay.
and 12G, 7 in parentheses. That correction should have been that we voted not to take a position on that.
Yes, that's
It was a
right.
It was a petition warrant article. Not that we didn't support it, or we did, or anything, just we didn't take a position.
Yes, that correction, Leah, should read that the school board does not take a position in support of or being in opposition to the tax cap rescission article. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sue.
That's okay.
Anything else? Okay, seeing none, Is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Sue. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ruby. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the minutes are approved
And I'm abstaining.
with one abstention, that being Broughton. That's correct, you weren't here to participate in, were you, Jeff?
No.
Technicalities. That was one thing of us. Okay, we now move on to item 7, which is other minutes in the packet, which ordinarily would show up as green.
There's red.
Some of them are blue.
Oh,
These are presumed to have been reviewed from the Wellness Council. And then the Policy Committee minutes of May 6th and March 20th. Those are for your information. Any comment on those?
I'm not sure. Was tomorrow night at 6 or 6:30?
6:30 for Sue.
6:30. So it's listed in here at 6. And it should be 6:30. That's under the May 6th minute.
Yeah, that was corrected on the notice.
Okay, for your information, that has been corrected. No action necessary. Item 8, read correspondence and reports that were included in the packet. Those are all purple. Sorry I missed the science fair, but I see that it was ably handled by Jeff from the board. Thank you for your participation there. Does anyone have any other comments on any of the reports?
Mr. Chairman, just one addition
Dan?
to mine. The DRA has requested it. I obtained a copy of the warrant that was posted this past election cycle with a signature from the school board on the actual warrant, so that they have it for their records. So
Okay.
at some point this evening, if each member who was in office at that time could please sign this document, I'll forward it to them.
Do we need to go back and get Yuri's signature?
We do not. We have a
As long as
quorum.
they're a quorum.
Yeah.
Be fixed.
Okay, before everyone leaves this evening, if you could sign the warrant with Dan, I'd appreciate it.
No.
Where do you sign it?
You need to, in the next meeting, change the policy.
But is it a typo?
No.
It's not.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Let's table to your next
Okay.
meeting.
All right.
Okay, nothing we need to act on. No other comments on any of the correspondence and reports that are included in the packet? We'll move on to our discussion items. The first item up for discussion this evening is item 9A, which is a report, review, and presentation on the Newfound Memorial Middle School test scores by Dr. Phil McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Migliori. This evening, we have a presentation for the school board and public focusing on kneecap results, this year's results. There will basically be 3 components to the presentation. First will be a presentation on the data or results that we received this year. That will be done in 2 parts, one at the elementary level and then another at the secondary level. As you know, grades 9 and 10 are not tested with the kneecap, but grade 11. So we decided to break that out because there is not a continuum of grades there. Another component will be the principals will speak to some of the contributing factors or any of the significant highlights that they would like to make you aware of. And we'll also then conclude with what's next. And that basically is, what will we continue to do to impact student learning? And I'll emphasize that what will we continue to do to impact student learning? Our goal is not to increase test scores. Our goal is to positively impact student learning. And I think that lends itself to a much more comprehensive approach and strategy to dealing with that issue. So with that, I don't know if Mr. Case and Mr. Mallett flipped a coin, but
If we did, I lost.
yeah, okay.
Okay, now you look at it.
Yeah, with their help.
Lights and somebody coming out with the scene.
Give it a second.
Okay.
I think I saw my.
John?
Yep.
I'm not sure how it got listed in the board minutes as NMMS kneecap results, because it's actually district results that we're looking at from grades 3 to 11. Kneecap test from grade 3 to 8, and then they take 2 years off and test grade 11. And when you say 6th grade kneecap results, it's actually based on 5th grade instruction. So when you get to the middle school, the only scores that the middle school actually owns are the 7th and 8th grade scores, because we had only had those 6th grade students for about 30 days before the testing occurs. My part of this, with support from the elementary administrators, is to just go through the data that I've come up with. The first section is going to be the results of this year's, this year's 12-13 kneecap. The second section will be the historical results ever since kneecap started. Coincidentally, kneecap started the same year that Ann and I came into the district, the 05-06 school year. And the third will be looking at cohort groups, actually, because when you say, let's look at 3rd grade test scores, you're looking at different groups of students every year. You're not really comparing apples to apples, you're comparing oranges to apples to oranges. Thank you. Can't talk. and then lastly, some of the things that we're working on, we have been working on, and will continue to work on. So first, these would be our whole school results in reading. And these are the students that test proficient and above, so either proficient or proficient with distinction. And as you can see, only in grade 5 and grade 6 did we come below the state average. We are above the state average in 4 out of the 6 grades that we are examining here. Now, when we say whole school, and I'm going to report it out in the second section just a little bit differently, whole school takes all scores, special ed scores, SES scores, regular ed scores, and combines them together. The second section, I have pulled it out because there's some things that are showing up that are really exciting in our special education scores in this last testing cycle. These are a comparison of the mean scale scores throughout the grade levels. And we didn't fare quite as well in the mean scale scores, only being at or above the state in 2 out of the 6 grade levels. So even though we have more students that are scoring proficient and above in a percentage basis, the average score that they get is a point or 2 points lower. Now you also have to, in all of this data, factor in the fact that with the state you're talking 40, 50,000 kids. 10 tests don't make a big deal. When you have a grade level that has 85, 86 kids, 10 kids can make a very big deal and really skew your results very, very quickly. Now this breaks out the difference between regular ed newfound students at all grade levels, and you'll see that is in the light green, and the regular ed for the state is in red. Special ed for our district is in dark blue, and special education for the state is in purple. We are at or above in regular ed, the state of New Hampshire, in reading in every grade except grade 5. The exciting part about this is when you look at our special education scores, in reading in particular, we are only below state average at grade 6. But when, again, I want to emphasize, when you're talking about the number of students, in grade 8 there are 15 special education students. And of those 15 scores that we were responsible for, 5 of them are no longer in this district and were tested elsewhere without us being able to have any impact whatsoever on how they were tested or the situation in which they were tested.
I also know in grade 6, a contributing factor is in one of my schools, we had a couple students that scored significantly below, and so that really dropped our number looking at our grade 6 with our students. So that was a contributing factor on why that 27% was there also.
Mean scale score basically mirrors the same thing it did when you were looking at whole school. It's usually, in 3rd grade it's a point above, 4th grade it's a point below, 2 points below in grade 5, a point below in grade 6, 2 points below in grade 7, and a point below in grade 8. So we're skimming within a point all the way through. The special education mean scale scores are strong, grades 3, 4, 5, fall down a little 6, 7, and are very strong in grade 8. Now math. Math has been an ongoing issue in the district since I've come here. We've always, in the early years, said that we were a year behind in math, and we've spent a lot of time and a lot of professional development time trying to address those issues. As you can see in the whole scale school scores, we are grades 3 through 5 right up there, and grades 6, 7, and 8 have taken a significant dip, and I had 12 to 14% in 1 year, depending on the grade you're talking about. I have a theory about why, and I'll get to that as we get into the historical scores. Mean scale scores in math, however, are a little bit stronger. We are above the state average in grades 3, 4, and 5, and fall slightly below in grades 6, 7, and 8. And there's an anomaly you don't see very often. Grade 4 special education has actually outscored its regular ed counterparts. At 83% of the special ed kids score proficient and above, and only 82% of the regular ed students. You see that same dip in mathematics in regular education that you saw in the last slide with whole school, but as you can see with the special ed students, we are well above state average all the way through. So a lot of the remediations that we undertook following our focused monitoring experience a couple of years ago, and the things we were trying to do to fix that gap between regular ed and special ed is really starting to show and starting to work. I would have preferred that at the 8th grade we didn't narrow the gap by lowering the regular ed scores, but the special ed scores came up at the same time.
So, yeah, on that slide back there.
You got it?
The 4th grade score then are kids at the beginning of 4th grade, right? Reflecting the 3rd grade?
3rd grade instruction, yes. Mean scale scores, we are at or above in 2 grade levels, and the other 4 are just slightly below. We are doing significantly better in special education scores than the state, but again, very, very small groupings of students in that special education data. And I've maintained the same colors to represent each through each slide, so it's a little easier to track. Historical data.
Is the special ed test different than?
It is not different. And
so they're taking the same test?
They are held to the exact same standard.
Okay.
And when you look at most of the schools across the state, those schools that are in need of improvement, it's usually, not always, but usually because of the special education subgroup. Those children with learning disabilities that are expected to be at, I think at this point, 93% proficient and above, or you don't make adequate yearly progress. This is a historical look at reading in grade 3. Now you can see the gray line that goes up through that. That is called a trend line. And I don't know how many of you remember back in October when I was discussing Dr. Aputa's report. Dr. Aputa had used a trend line, and I had been offended by some of his data because I thought it was misleading. But when you actually do the right click and say put in a trend line, this Excel shows you exactly what the average has been over the course of the years. So even though you've got that huge spike back in 2009 in special education of 62%, your trend line is still pretty significant. I would say, I'm hardly a mathematician, but I would say we're operating at about a 45% increase over the course of time. And in the 3rd grade, ever since 2010, we have been above the state level for reading scores at grade 3.
And when did we start with the RTI program?
It was my 2nd year in Danbury that I, implemented it in Danbury. So that was, I'm here, 6 years ago? 6 years ago?
Grade 4 is showing similar growth rates. I do like the trend line because it gives you a better idea of evening it out, because as you can see, the scores do jump all over the place. The state scores tend to be a little more even because, again, you're talking about 40,000 plus students. Grade 5 reading proficiency, despite a drop-off this year in regular ed at 80%, down from 84%, that trend line is still going past the 85% marking. And it is being paralleled by the special education scores, which since 2009 have been pretty much at or above, except in 2011. Grade 6, and this is, again, these are evaluating 5th grade instruction. Grade 6 has been at or above the state average since 2008. Even though it dropped about a percentage this year. And this is one of the only grades where we're seeing any regression in reading in special ed over the last 3 years. However, the trend line is still continuing upward, though not quite at that 45-degree mark that we are seeing in the other grades. Grade 7 reading is also moving along those lines. We're right at state average in 2012 as we were in 2010, fell just below in 2011, but still a significant trend line over the years from 61% starting in 05 to 84% in 2012. And the SPED results are jumping all over the place, but that's pretty significant. And please remember, every dot on here is a different group of kids. It's a different cohort of kids.
Well, this is last year's low score.
Right.
Just a year later. Same kids.
Exactly.
Still low, yeah. But not as low as they were, I don't think.
Grade 8 reading proficient and above. The angle of the grade 8 trend line is significant, both in special education and in regular education. Last year, in the 2011 year, we had 93% of our regular ed students score proficient and above. That's really significantly above the state. Dropped back a little bit, again, different group of kids this year to match the state, but that trend line is pretty strong. And in the special education, if you look starting in 2009, you don't even need a trend line. That's pretty obvious that our reading programs and our teaching of direct reading instruction is having some significant impact on our special education students. Mathematics. Grade 3, we have been at or above state average in regular education since 2010. Good strong trend line. Good strong trend line in special education as well. Picking up again. What year did we start everyday math?
It was at least, I've been here for 7 years.
2007 or 6? Six. Grade 4 mathematics doing the same thing. The angle on that trend line for special education is actually startling. This is the group that actually had the special ed kids score better than the regular ed kids did. Trend line in regular ed is pretty sharp, but this was the goal of focus monitoring, was to get the special ed kids to develop quicker, you know, get a year and a half growth in 1 year, as opposed to just moving along with the other kids because you stay in the same rate. And this is one of the grades where it is actually played out in that fashion. Grade 5 is jumping around a little bit in the special education scores, but the trend line is still pretty strong. Trend line is also good for the regular ed students, at or above state average for 1, 2, 3, 4 of the last 5 years. And again, that is measuring 4th grade instruction. 6th grade mathematics, we're starting to see that downtrend starting in 2010. These are, again, 5th grade scores, or these are the scores of 5th grade instruction, not middle school instruction. So it does tell me, and this is where I want to talk about this a little bit, as we look at 7th grade and we see that significant drop from 2010 to 2011 to 2012, and you're going to see roughly the same thing in the 8th grade, my first inclination was, okay, is it the instruction? Is it because these students had a first-year teacher? I took an experienced math teacher and made her a social studies teacher in order to save a position and split grade levels, and wound up with basically a first-year teacher teaching 6th grade and a first-year teacher teaching 7th grade. And those are the 2 instructional years that would impact these scores. But then that didn't make any sense, because the teacher I made into a social studies teacher was teaching math half the time. And when I went back and tracked it, it really didn't make any difference. What does seem to be the difference, in my theory of this, is 2 years ago, in response to our special education needs, and again, coming out of the focus monitoring, we wanted to test as many of the special ed kids individually or in small groups, and I was having, besides the full class testing, up to 19 and 20 separate testing locations. So we used to test the kids 3 days. Over and done with. Now, in order to, or the last 2 years, in order to accommodate that huge number of one-on-one testing or small group testing, because you need personnel to do that, we spread it out over 7 days. So the kids took their first reading test on a Tuesday and didn't finish their last reading test till the following Wednesday. And as you can see, the reading scores, which are the first 3 days, are strong and stayed right where they belong. However, you look at the math scores, even at the 6th grade, because I believe, and opinion is opinion, I believe that because of the extension of the math testing, or the test delivery, the students, 6th, 7th, and 8th, all got to those last 3 days of math testing and were like, I'm done. I don't want any part of this, because the NWEA results that I look at does not match what I look at in the kneecap scores. And last year I would have said, well, that's an anomaly. When I saw it fall again this year, there's something significantly wrong with how we're delivering the testing, not how we're delivering the instruction.
So the hypothesis is that if you did the math first and then the reading second, then the reading scores would drop. Based on
I would love to try an experiment, but the state won't let you do that. You got to do read 1, 2, 3, and then math 1, 2, 3, and then writing 1, 2. And writing is just for the 8th grade. My hypothesis is, however, if you condense that testing into the 3 days that we operated with from 05 all the way to 10, 11, that we wouldn't see this drop off in scores in the math section of the test.
Are they, this goes to staff or lack of staff, are they being just proctored or are they being assisted? And the reason I ask is I'm wondering, can we get volunteer proctors just for the test days?
We do a lot of training for our proctors, and usually they are our paraprofessionals or our special education teachers, the people that know these students best. What accommodations you can give to them are based on what is written into their individualized educational plan. I think I have a plan. It's called test all the sixth graders the first 3 days, test all the seventh graders the next 3 days, test all the eighth graders the next 3 days, because at least that way, while the school is testing more frequently, it's over 9 days instead of over 7, at least each individual group of students is only testing for those 3 days. And you know, we get to next year, which is the last year of kneecap testing, we're never really going to know. If we get to next year and those scores go right back up, then the hypothesis is there. Because I firmly believe what we're doing instructionally is strong and well-directed.
I just wondered about maybe college students coming down and assisting.
Ms. Hill, what research there is on the topic that I've seen indicates that when students are taking the test with someone they know and the proctors know them, results seem to be higher. And I think part of that is because of the expectation that the proctor has. You know, they can read body language and see when kids are struggling or when they're doing well. Not that they can intervene, but it has shown that you'll get better results with known people.
And despite Herculean efforts, we have never managed to get our 8th grade math scores up to the state level. We came within 1% 3 years ago. The trend line is still pretty solid, but you know, when you start at 37%, growth is going to come regardless. I'm kind of excited to look at what's happening with the special education scores. I think a lot of that has to do with the move we made to co-taught math classes 3 years ago, so that our students that struggle the most, our special ed students and other students that struggle with math, have their math class with both a special educator who is highly qualified in math and a regular ed math teacher using the same curriculum that the regular ed students are using, but differentiated to their level. And what this does is it actually allows the students who are taking the kneecap tests to see in their math class what's going to be on the kneecap test. Because when you were doing strictly special education math classes, that curriculum was so significantly different that you're giving an 8th grade test to kids that are working on 3rd grade math.
That was actually a commendation of Dr. Okuda, that thing.
And the cohorts. This is the same groups of kids. So our current 4th grade in reading, the regular ed students have dropped 5 points in a year. In the same amount of time, the state of New Hampshire has dropped 3%. However, it has drastically risen in the special ed. Now, there's only 2 data points for this group because they got tested in 3rd grade last year and in 4th grade this year. Their math scores, again, about a 4% drop where the state went up about 2%, but we still wound up above state average. We're way above state average in the special education students in that grade. However, in that particular grade, I think there are maybe 9, 10 students that we're talking about.
Well, I think it's important to just note that the change in percentage points can be so subtle to be, 3 students move in or 2 students move out. I mean, it can be a student starts in Newfound and goes to Interlakes or goes to Franklin or comes here. I mean, so they just kind of fluctuate throughout. Even if you had them for a month or 2 months, they count on your data, which can be good or can be bad. I mean, I've seen it go both ways. So.
Oh, absolutely. It can work both in your favor and against you. I was looking at the 7th grade this afternoon, realized that the 12% drop in math, because of the size of that group, there's like 86 kids, 12% drop is 11 kids. On the spreadsheet, I've got 8 kids that no longer are in district, but we still own their scores because they were here last year. Of those 7 kids, 5 of them did not make proficiency. So half of the issue of that 12% drop was something beyond our control or beyond our mediation at the time. You can't control any of this because you can't control kids and how well they test. Current grade 5, up 88%, both 3rd and 4th grade. 5th grade, they took a bit of a drop, going to below state average instead of above, but the trend in the IEP students is solid for the 3 years that they've been taking the test. 6th grade, current 5th grade in math, they still remain in regular ed above the state across the board.
Did you just distinguish between SPED and IEPs?
They're the same thing, I'm sorry. Special education or individualized education plan means the same thing. Well,
not really.
You know,
I just wanted to clarify the
okay.
characterization.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm mixing the terms.
Okay.
Special education are students in need of specialized education, and an individual education plan is the document or device put in place to meet the needs of those students that require special education.
Correct. Yep.
Okay?
Right.
Our current 6th grade readers, at or above state average the last 2 years. They were a little below that in 3rd and 4th grade. The drop in special education students' performance is a little troubling. In math, they did rally this year in special education, but took a rather significant drop from their performance in 5th grade to 6th grade. Hence my theory about testing time, because this is being tested on 5th grade curriculum, but at the middle school where the testing has been drawn out over so many days. Current 7th grade reading, strong performances every 4 out of the last 5 years by regular ed. Special education students are 3 out of the 6 years they've been taking the test, but certainly are moving in the right direction. 7th grade math, that precipitous drop as they get to 2011 and even worse in 2012. And even though the scores are going down in math at grade 7, you'll notice that the state, for some reason, is doing so as well. And for that kind of a percentage point over that number of students, I'm wondering a little bit about what's going on. I don't know enough to analyze that, but I wonder what's going on at the state level for that cohort of kids to be.
What was that the year that they changed? They added more rather than the portfolio. They got into the filming and the taping of student performance and almost a different set of criteria being used.
2 years
that.
ago? Yep, that's what it was.
I think that may have been a contributing factor statewide
Right.
to that.
And you have to be, in order to take an ALPS assessment, you have to be much more significantly impaired than you did in the past.
I have a question about the 2 tests, because you said our students do well on the NEWA. What years do they take that?
We take it, doing grade 2
Starting in
yet?
second grade.
2 through 10?
9 and 10 take it at the
Yeah.
high school.
2 through 10.
Fall and spring.
And they take it in the fall and the spring?
Fall
That
and
was my
spring.
next question, was what time of year? Because back to the idea that they test better with people they know. The kids you're testing in 6th grade, they're
And
new, they've just had a transition.
The 2 tests are very, very different. NWA is a dynamic test taken on a computer. You get the question right, the next one's harder. You get the question wrong, the next one's easier. And it doesn't matter if the kids looked at each other's computers because they're completely individualized tests, but it gives us a much more accurate read on where they are educationally, where the gaps are. And we use that more diagnostically in what we do than we use NECAP. NECAP is a snapshot from the 2nd week in October. but it does carry a lot of weight. 8th grade reading has been very strong, or certainly getting up there, and the 8th grade special education scores, as you can see, for this group, these kids are doing some serious learning. And it was, if I want to go back to that, it was 2 years ago that we started in with Just Words direct reading instruction. The middle school had never taught direct reading instruction before. We were teaching English classes. We were teaching literacy and genre. And then it was like, well, we got kids that really can't read at the 3rd and 4th grade level. Maybe we ought to teach them to read. And so we implemented Just Words. We used the Read 180 program, other reading interventions by our inclusion specialists, and we're starting to see significant returns from those investments. And this current 8th grade group, this year was the worst performance in their entire lives. That is just a horrible drop, and I cannot believe it's instructional based, even though those students were instructed all year by a first-year teacher. So, next steps at the elementary. You guys are up.
Can I show them the drive?
How to do what? Oh, you want
So
your map?
Dana's gonna show us the first one, which is pretty amazing. He's piloted this year at, and Molly have piloted this year at their 2 schools at Bristol and Bridgewater. And so as a classroom teacher, you plug into this spreadsheet your unit assessments, your NWA data,
This is not my email.
So the classroom teacher plugs into this spreadsheet their scores that they have on certain assessments. Once the teacher plugs in the assessment score, it turns a color. So it's a band, and again, we learned and used this, or we learned about it in focus monitoring a couple of years ago. And the colored bands tell you what percentage, and make sure I'm saying this right, what percentage, the percentile the student stays or is in, currently in with that assessment. So we would like our students to, how I call it is grow up the rainbow. So if you start at red, you want to go to orange, and then you want to go to yellow, and you want to move to green and blue. So you want to grow up the rainbow, and that means that you're, what?
The darker the better.
The darker the better, okay? Good way to describe it. So you want their percentile to increase. Or, for some of our students, we know that some students, because they're not natural test takers, they might stay in the 60th percentile. And so you want to see that their color band stays the same. Because some students we know, and I would have been one of them as, you know, in elementary and even as a high school student, I didn't score well on tests. But so you would want to see those types of students stay within their color band and not go down the rainbow or turn to a lighter color. So Dana will show that a little bit for you.
I don't know anything about going up a rainbow.
I'm
I will
really
show you
interested
what-
to hear that the use of color to detect data is a good idea.
I'm a
So
black and white person.
I'll show you, this is I wish I could take all the credit, I really can't. It was something that me and myself and a couple of other teachers, my literacy specialist, my special education teacher, we were talking about this, and I have a lot of grand ideas, and sometimes I need some help to get them to work, so I get some people to, I said, you know, wouldn't it be neat if we could get this to work? We could put different numbers in, and the spreadsheet would change, and teachers could really get some really good use out of all this data that we have. So when I show you the spreadsheet, I didn't want to put it up right yet until you get into it. You won't hear me. But when you see it, we have tons of data. We have a lot. I mean, we just looked at kneecap data, and I don't know how long we've been talking about kneecap data, but that's just one test. We have all kinds of tests. I'll show you what we do just in elementary school. They have, I'll bunch of it at the middle school and the high school. So we have a ton of things, so I'll show you kind of actually how our spreadsheet works. So we worked on this last year, and it actually was built last summer. And actually this summer, we're going to build 2 more, because what we found is, this is our spreadsheet. It's put into Google Docs. All of those fields are conditionally formatted, so when you put the number in, it automatically changes the percentile. I won't tell you, these are actual numbers. This is data that we use. This is the real thing. I just took off, the teacher and the students and changed the grade and stuff like that. But this is the real data that we use. So it has all, if you look on the far left, it has a field for the student name, and then the next one is our literacy kneecap. So we put all of our kneecap scores in. The next field over is our NEWA score. So the NEWA is the test we were talking about. We test in the spring. We test in the fall, I'm sorry. And then we test in the winter if students we think that we could benefit from the data for testing them in the winter, we'll do that. And then we really test them all in the fall. So how this works, it's really, I have to slow down when I'm talking about this, because I look at this all the time. But, so I know like all the bands, what they all mean, and so do my teachers, which is the exciting thing. But what we did is we formatted all these bands. So when we talk about bands, this is what we did. We took and we said for the NEWA test, if a student scores between 0 and 10 percentile points, we conditionally format that to turn red when you put that in there. And all the way up, the colors change. So my teachers, it's really been exciting, because when they put that number in, they know immediately what's going on. Like they can tell. I know right off, if I have a dark blue, that's about 2 grade levels ahead, above grade level. And then light blue is about 1, green is at grade level, yellow is a little bit below, it's not quite 2, and then red going down is about 2 grade levels, and sometimes even more behind. But and then so you can see, if we go back, you can see all the data that we have, and it just keeps going. So these are all our data, and just keeps, so you can see we have a lot of tests that our teachers look at, and we look at these when the data becomes available, probably every month to 6 weeks. We'll sit down as a team, we look at all this data, and this is pretty indicative of what has been going on. If you take a look at these colors, you can figure this out just like I can. When they tested in the fall, that was their scores. You see, we have 2 reds, we have a few yellows, we have 2 dark blues, and then as we go to the spring, I can tell you right off, that is really good growth. So we're going from at grade level to almost 2 grade levels above in 1 year on the first field, and then it just keeps, you can kind of see how that's working. So teachers get really excited. They're really using this data to inform their instruction, which is what we want them to do. We want them to use this, not say, well, we didn't do very well on the test last year, which is a different group of kids that I no longer have access to and can't do anything with. This data, I have these kids right now. So if they're not doing well, we can put things into place to help them get better.
So what sort of things would you do for student number 9?
So what we would do is, I'll just go over just a little bit. So you see this in where it's P. This is the start of our benchmarks, and benchmarks are our students take these tests. They take a unit of instruction and then they test on it. And based on what that test comes out, they will use that to better inform their instruction. So if a kid needs, I'll give you an example. See the student in red and the student in yellow, and even the student down there in orange, we notice that something is is going on with that student. Maybe they didn't get that concept. Maybe they're struggling in one way or another. How can we put support in to help that student understand those concepts and get better? And if you look at the next 6-week cycle, that red turned to light blue. So they got that concept. That yellow turned to green. So they're on the next test, they got that concept. So
But what sort of actions took place?
usually I heard Ruby mentioned RTI. That is what we do I know we're more familiar with Bridgewater Hebron, so been doing it there. We use RTI, which is, I like to call it a response to instruction. Some people call it response to intervention. Basically, response to instruction makes more sense to me because we're responding to our instruction. Our instruction's not working so well. What are we going to do differently that we can make it work? And it could be more direct reading instruction. It could be more fluency, which is having kids read faster. It could be increased vocabulary. It could be comprehension, reading and asking students more questions. It could be teaching them how to sound out words. There are so many things, and I'm really not doing justice, like kind of just saying them off the top of my head, but it's a diagnostic looking at this data and making adjustments to how we're teaching. And our teachers they've really wrapped their arms around this. And it's one of those things that kind of makes my job, like, it's nice to go in and have a meeting with teachers and we work on something like this, put a lot of effort. We put a lot of effort and time into creating this because it was just a blank sheet. We created that. And have them actually say on numerous occasions that I have all the data that I need right in front of me on one sheet. And there's not a lot of schools and districts that can say that. And I know I've talked to them. So we have some really exciting things here. And this is, I could just keep going. I could do this. I'm trying to go fast, so I don't want to take up all the time. But we also have this is another sheet for just math. So our math scores are in there. And I know we look at NEWA and we see like our math is dropping. This is our NEWA math scores. This is, I mean, those are some really solid math scores. If you see dark blue, those are really solid math scores. I mean, so when these students are taking tests, when we are figuring out what they need help in and then providing them with the help that they need, we're seeing some really good growth there. And this is one class, this is one school, one grade, but it's something that we're working on, and teachers are really they're really getting into it. And when I moved to Bristol this year, I brought this spreadsheet and we started using it. And Molly can attest. The teachers in Bristol, they started this right off at the beginning of the year. They've been inputting their data, and it's really been helpful. So what I like to see is the teachers are doing this. They're putting this information in, and they're really getting something out of it. And it's really helpful too. So it helps them. It makes their job easier. So it actually formats and puts in all our students. So this would be like student one. It puts all their data in a nice, easy format. So when you have a parent conference, you can just print that one piece of the spreadsheet. It has all of your students' data for the entire year. So when you have a parent conference, you can show that. So it makes their job really easy. We didn't put all the fancy colors in there though. Maybe next time. So we are actually working on this over the summer, myself and another teacher. We're going to be working on creating 2 of these, because what we found this year was we have too much data for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers on the whole sheet, that some of that data the kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade teachers don't need, and they need some other data that the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers don't necessarily need, so we're going to make 2 of them. So that's something we're going to work on this year. And we're going to clean up some of this, why we piloted it. We found a lot of issues that we wanted to clean up for next year. So we'll be working on that. I'll just show you one thing here. So let's say if a student 1, if their score, this is what it works, this is how it works. If they scored in the 50th percentile, once you change it, you see it just changes color. If they were in the 10th percentile, it would change. So they get instant feedback. It's kind of like shooting baskets. You know, you get instant feedback that, you know, how things are working, and they can use that to drive their instruction. And so it's really good. I'm really excited about it. I think it's one of those things that we're doing and we're thinking is going to really make some really good headway, and our teachers are excited and they're inputting all the data. It's really nice. So that's what I have for that. And
we started in looking at NWA using the colored bands in my 2 schools, and then once Dana said the pilot was going well and successful, so we're going to be rolling it out to all of our elementary schools next in the fall. So that's exciting. Okay.
What I would say is that at one point, many schools in the state were finding that they were data rich, but analysis poor. We had all this data, but we had no means of efficiently analyzing the data so that we could use that information to inform our instruction and our instructional practices. The tool that has been developed does exactly that. It really facilitates teachers using data very quickly, and to your point, Mr. Migliori, once they identify by, you know, that visual representation that, you know, this kid is an orange, you then that raises that flag, and it just is a much more efficient way of moving forward with what you need to do. And when both Eric and Dana mentioned that this is a much more valuable diagnostic tool when you have support like that to make things happen.
Dana, are you planning on giving the individual student information to their future teacher next year?
Yeah, we are. Actually, one of the really good parts of, one of the things that we did, which looking back was really helpful, was we created it as a Google Doc. So a Google document, you can share that with everyone else. So everyone who needs access to that classroom teacher's data, so what I just showed up there, can have access to it. So I have access, Molly has access, the teacher, specialists, all the people who work with that child have access to that data. So it's really simple to just click and share that data with next year's teacher. So that is one of the things that we can do now and make it really effective. What we used to do is fill out little cards and put data and information on there, and it was really time consuming to fill out all that data. Now we have everything that they need in one document, and it would take literally like 3 seconds to share that with whoever needs to have that. And next year it will even be better, because we're going to create a much better document this summer. I'm sure of it, because we get a little better. So yeah, it will be shared.
The second bullet is similar. The second bullet is similar. It's a Google Doc that we use, and so we, as classroom teachers and as specialists, so our literacy specialist, our special ed teacher, we've created a spreadsheet to help say what accommodation students need when they take the NWA and when they take the NECAP. And so they're really as if a student moves in halfway through the year, and as a classroom teacher, I know they work better in a small group, or I know that their reading ability is a little weak, but their math is fantastic, then you go into the spreadsheet and say, I would like the math read to the student when they take these certain tests. So we're sharing the spreadsheet, and it helps keep us organized as the student progresses through our school and what accommodations they need. So that's another nice document that we've created this year that has really helped us with organizing our accommodations. And we're going to keep that going.
And just quick, I just think back to what Eric said about testing at different times. I know in the elementary level, we actually test all at once. So the students are used to that format. So if you change, I could see changing that format and having kind of that dip, because they're used to getting it done, and then they can go back and do their work. So we'll do like 3rd grade 1 week, 4th grade the next week, 5th grade the next week. It's kind of the way we do that. So the next bullet is just some of the work we've done. There's many things. There's probably some other things that we could be up there and we just didn't put up there. But there's always some things. But it's just a few of the things. The essential skills work that Ann worked on last summer was really great. We kind of targeted, these are the essential skills that every student needs to know by grade level. Some of those things are some of the reasons why the special education scores have gone up. Unpacking the Common Core, the group I worked with last summer, we spent this summer working on looking at our current curriculum and comparing that, doing an analysis of the Common Core. It was pretty intense work, I'll have to say. The Common Core, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, it's about that thick. And the teachers, we had about 8 of them, we all sat around, and it was pretty intense work there. But they did a really great job. We have a lot of really good useful data, which is also we put in Google Docs here for everybody to see. Homework alignment to the Common Core, I think that's going to be this summer.
Yeah, I'm working, one of my pet peeves is homework and how effective we're giving students homework assignments and how does it align to our curriculum and to eventually the Common Core. So 7 teachers have signed up to work with me a little bit over the summer, looking at our current homework practice and how can we tweak that and modify it to get a better outcome. Next, starting on early release day, we're going to be kicking off our work with Dr. Heather Driscoll. Again, looking at that curriculum mapping, the curriculum we have in current, looking forward and ahead to a Common Core. And what do we need to look at? Where are the holes or gaps potentially in our curriculum right now? And we have a good 15 months or so to work on that, to kind of button that up a little bit before our students take that test the first time around. And she'll be spending some time, grade level meetings next fall with our students. We've implemented, we've heard about RTI meetings before, and PLC meetings are taking place at all elementary school levels now.
What's PLC?
Professional Learning Communities.
Yeah, Professional Learning Community, what we do is we created I know Eric does this at the middle school, and we do it at the elementary schools, where they do it at the high school as well. I think by necessity, there's so many things they have to do for their curriculum. But what we do is we kind of like the work that we do during committees, that you guys do in committees, where you just sit around, you have things that need to be solved, whatever. It could be curriculum, could be instruction, could be looking at student work, or how we create lesson plans, and they just sit around and have collegial conversations and really try to get better at what they do. And that's probably the short version of a PLC, but really it's sitting around and having those conversations and really trying to get the work done. And RTI, we talked about that, which is response to instruction, and how we're going to find whatever we need to help those students grow.
Just, we're taking up a lot of time, we'll quick this up. We've done some book studies at the elementary level. This year in New Hampton and Danbury, we're working on vocabulary and how to bring a richer in our data. It showed that our vocabulary was a little weaker in places, and so we've read this book together. It's really practical in nature and gives some teachers some really immediate things that they can implement in their classroom in small group instruction or whole group instruction. And then at the other two schools, they've read a couple books.
Yep, we've read a book called Focus. It's working on elevating the essentials. And the other one was Teach Like a Champion. We've done a lot of work with that in both Bridgewater. And we've worked for a couple of years in Bridgewater on Teach Like a Champion techniques, and this year we started working on that in Bristol as well. We were lucky to send we have a couple of really great, we have many great literacy specialists, but we were fortunate enough to send two of them to Letters Train the Trainer module, so they actually will be able to train our staff and reduce the cost that is associated with sending people to trainings and things like that, so that's going to be really exciting. We also do a lot of work with Dr. Carol Tolman and Janine Mason, or just another math consultant, so we can figure out what new techniques, new strategies that we can use. And
What does LETTERS stand for?
Letters is Anne. You wanna take that one?
I'll Google it when I get back to my seat. It's really how to teach reading.
Okay.
And so the first module is understanding the brain and how some students pick up reading just like that and other students really struggle with it. The second module is sounds and understanding the correspondence between looking at an L and knowing what that sound is and blending the sounds together. And then the third module starts talking about spelling, and it goes over the 5 principles of the spelling rules in our language, and how students fall down in spelling, and what are the ways to use data to say, but that's where they're missing the vowel teams or they're missing the digraphs. And so those are the 3 beginning modules that we felt that teachers, for whatever reason, need some really deeper instruction and understanding of that, especially on the primary level, to help them educate our students to be phenomenal readers.
Letters is language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling.
Thanks, Vinny.
Gotta add some value there.
And then the last one is Number World. It's a math intervention program which fits in very nicely with everyday math, and where we find students are struggling to get to mastery on some concepts. We can use this intervention program to help some of our students if they're not getting some of the concepts. So that's something that we started about a year ago. That middle school?
Actually, before middle school, I just wanted to mention briefly some of now that my colleagues have done the heavy lifting by giving all the details. I'd just like to mention briefly some of the global benefit that comes from doing all the work we've put in place so far. It's created for us actually a good basis for conversation around what to do next. When we're talking about next steps, how to have conversations around what is supposed to be put in place next to move us to the next level. Say, for instance, if we take a look at one of the 2 schools that we were assigned to this year, we were assigned to Bridgewater and Bristol. And so Bristol, for instance, is a school in need of improvement. And so for us at Bristol, we would really need to take a look at all the detailed work that has been put in place and then see from that, what can we do in terms of mapping out how we get to where we need to get to. And so we have this year been put in place a group of teachers and us administrators to put a structure in place that will help us to move forward. And in this, basically, we've been asked to set goals and objectives that will lay out how we get to where we want to get to. And so with this sitting plan, we have looked at two just basic objectives, which is basically how can we help teachers improve instruction so that kids can achieve. That's just one of our basic goals. And the other one is how to build capacity within the building so that teachers and administration can be able to move forward with what we need to do to increase achievement in our building. So again, with all this groundwork done in all the different details that have been laid out by my colleagues, it really has helped the conversation between us and teachers to really be sound. Because now you can come to the table looking at all the data that have been provided, and data does not lie. It's there, and the bands are there to show where kids are, where they need to move. So when that is there and the conversation is put on the table, it makes it really easy. Well, not easy, but it facilitates conversation between us and teachers and how to plan to move forward. So I think that's just one of the many global benefits to what is going on. And on behalf of my colleagues and myself, I like to mention that all this little work that's been taking place in these different parts, if you put all of it together, the global benefits are many, but that's just one of many of those benefits that come to fruition when you do such grand work. Because the conversation now that is on the table between us and teachers, it becomes really fruitful, and then the ears are opened up to each other, and I can say something, you can say another thing, we can exchange ideas, and if I have a point that I have to make, you can listen to that. If you have a question to ask, you can go ahead and do that. So it really promotes that kind of conversation between us and staff, and that's just one of the many global benefits that comes from the kind of work that's being done. I just wanted to mention that briefly.
Okay, and I'm going to finish up with two slides for next steps at the middle school. We did our curriculum mapping about 5 years ago, so it's made it much easier for us to go back through and realign those materials to the Common Core. And I'd say we're about 85% complete at this time, so we're going to continue working on that. I certainly plan to return to 3-day test administration while continuing to target those individual and small group testing needs. I want to continue with our Read 180 and Just Words reading intervention programs. They have, I think, given us a great deal of return on our special education students, as have our co-taught math classes.
I have a question on Read 180, just because I'm not sure. Is Read 180 for everybody, or is Read 180 for special education students?
It's, I'm sorry, we don't actually treat it as a special education program. I'd say about half the kids that are in Read 180 our SPED kids are regular ed. Read 180 targets comprehension, whereas Just Words targets fluency. So it would be a very different type of kid in either program, depending on what their individual needs are. And of course, we're going to continue to use data to inform instruction, guide decision making, and check for effectiveness. Continue with our use of professional learning community protocols to examine student work, teaching practices, and other pertinent subjects, and begin to develop student learning objectives utilizing backward design. Student learning objectives is something coming down from the state like a freight train as part of the new teacher evaluation model, where you need to come up with, what did they say, Phil, 3 or 4 per subject per year of those real core concepts that you want to be benchmarking and dipsticking throughout the year. And as they move to teacher evaluation, having a component of student performance in it, we need to have those in place in order for that to occur. So I thank you for your attention, and I'm sure you're very anxious to hear Mike's voice instead of mine.
I don't know if anybody wants a bathroom break or anything. Before I begin, I will not be as long. I have one grade to report on, not several, as my colleagues have done. I'm going to show the testing year 2012 last year for our present class of juniors, and they are the kneecap results for Newfound Regional High School. And I'm going to show you them similarly to the way that Eric did in a couple of data points. I will show you the outright raw scores, that is by category of performance, from with distinction, proficient, partially proficient, and substantially below proficient. Those are the 4 category scores, and I mention that because each category is assigned a scoring number. And when you are in it as a student and have scored at those categories, the proficient with distinction number is 100. And then you multiply that by the number of students who achieve that, and you do a division by the number tested, and it begins to show you the mean scale score. I will show you the mean scale scores for the high school. And I think that that's a good choice that Eric made, because it's the score of all the students. I will show you also the scores of those at the high school who were proficient and above. But that's not all of the students. And what's the difference? The difference is that we need to get all of our students up to proficient, and we need to know where they are in relation to that proficient benchmark. So the category of partially proficient is one you need to look at, and look at the test items to see how far away from proficient that category of student performers were. Also, we want to look at how many students overall in both reading and math are at the lowest level, where we have the biggest work to do and where we have to dig in the most. So I'm sorry that this is so small. I'm only going to point out that the kneecap results come to us on this score sheet, and they are in reading, math, and writing. And these are the 4 categories I just talked about: level 4, 3, 2, and 1. 4 is proficient with distinction, 3 is proficient, 2 is partially proficient, and level 1 is substantially below proficient. I'm not going to linger here, as I said, but I think it is relevant, and you'll see it better in the next couple of slides, that in reading for the high school, this class, for the first time, had 0% at level 1. So we had none of the students tested significantly below proficient. The mean scale score is in green for the high school, and the state mean is in blue. So our trend starting here with this 1145 is upward, with a significant dip in 2010. And that anomaly we're trying to figure out in terms of the testing environment and/or the cohort group, but we are back on track. And so in 2011, in reading, where we had the mean scale score of 1149, this past fall we scored at 1150 in the mean. So this is our trend, with again 2010 as an anomaly. What that means is that in relation to the task force district we've been asked to compare ourselves with, we are, with that mean scale score of 1150, placed here in some of the comparisons. This is the group average of that task force, and that group average was at about 1148. How do we get there? Changing the subject to proficiency. In 2011, we had 34% of those tested at proficient with distinction in reading, and 53% at proficient. We slipped a little bit from with distinction to 31 this year, and a little bit from proficient to 50%, but we had a combined 81% proficient or proficient with distinction in reading in this testing year. And again, at the lowest level for the first time, although it's a low percentage, thank goodness, We didn't have anybody in category 1, substantially below proficient in reading. So we're pulling everybody up.
I've got a question about
Yes.
the reading.
Mhm.
Just going back to scheduling, curriculum, stuff like that. This is Joanna's class, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so this is last year when you were in 10th grade, when they were,
This is this fall,
this is
in
this
October,
fall. Okay,
11th
but
grade.
based on their 10th grade.
Well, they've had 2 years of high school when they take the test.
Right,
Mhm.
right, okay. And when did Read 180 start? Just wondering, I'm looking for.
06, 07.
Okay, so this is a group that benefited from that. Yeah. And I know you hated block scheduling, but how long did you run block scheduling at the middle school?
This is the first year we've not had block scheduling.
So all of their years were in that. That's it.
These are the proficiency ranges and scores for the task force in the districts where, again, at the group average or above it, we are at 81%, as are 2 of the schools in that group, and a couple are above us. The state average would be 29% and 48% respectively in proficient with distinction and proficient.
Boy, we're the only one up there with 0.
That's right.
That's good.
Which one
So-
of those are you doing?
I think the top one.
I'm not at all surprised.
When we turn to math, the scoring's very different. It's very different in the state. I'm not trying to say that because it's lower overall, it accounts for us not needing to achieve more. We do. But again, our trend line with that anomaly in 2010 accepted is upward, and the mean scale score for 2012 is above the mean scale score for last year in 2011.
Was 2010 also a lower scoring math year?
Yes.
Yeah.
And at the state level for that mean scale score or the average, you have the blue, and this is our green trend.
Green is taking over.
Last year, and this year. So again, the same placement within what was our charge to be at or above the mean in the task force comparison. We are here. The group average was at a mean score of 1136. We're only a point above that. That's a basis point, so it represents a bunch of different scores. But it gives you some idea, not only of the region or the task force, but of what's happening in math in the state. Not all over the state, but it's a different equation than in a reading. So for our testing in 2012 in math, if we're looking at proficiency, last year we had 26% proficient and none at proficient with distinction. So we moved 4% up into the proficient with distinction in Joanna's class that tested in the fall, and 33% into proficient. So we had an 11-point increase in proficiency for the testing year 2012 over 2011. This is our concern. It has remained flat, a little bit lessened. We're moving some here in this direction, but we need to concentrate on the group that was partially proficient and substantially below proficient in math. Some of the comparisons for proficiency, where we were talking about our score at 33 and 4, 37% proficient, puts us in this range above the state and to the right of the group average. And you can see this green increasing as you move to the right with the numbers proficient. So our job is to move more of these students who are partially proficient, the 25%, who may be a question or two away, into this proficient range, while we're trying to work on those who may be least skilled in accentuating where they are with some real progress monitoring to move them up into the other ranges towards proficient. Our writing mean is above the state by a point. These are the newfound writing scores in green. The state is in blue. And they scale it differently on a 10-point scale rather than on the 1,500-point scale or 1,200-point scale of the reading and the math.
That's a strong area in middle school too.
Yes, it is.
Right.
So, in reading, overall, at 81%, we are here, and it gives you a comparison to the mean. We only had 10 students tested in our IEP group for grade 11. 12 students tested. 7 scored proficient. And our socioeconomically challenged portion, which was 33% of those tested, had good scores, performing significantly above the state level. We cannot say the same for math, where we didn't have any of the 10 students tested proficient this year in math.
Are they ever the same students in socioeconomic and the IEP, or are they identified primarily as one and not the other?
Primarily as one and not the other.
That's not true. You
Maybe I misunderstood her question.
Unless I misunderstood the question. Very often, a student with an IEP will also be counted in the SES category.
Oh, yeah. They're not mutually
Everybody's
exclusive, but they're not all identical either.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are more students in the SES section who are not IEP students.
Okay, yeah, right. I was just wondering if there are none here, that's going to bring this down if there's any crossover. Right.
So our special education strategies are equivalent to what we want to do for whole school as well, because that population is mainstreamed in our building. And for 2012, 2013, for example, we had the origin of a new math course, an algebra seminar. It's a remedial math class. It's necessary to take those with lower skills to get them ready for our